What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. On with us today, we have Matthew Chambers of the Falcoholic podcast over there. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on, man. Matt Ryan, now an Indianapolis Colt. The Falcons trade longtime quarterback Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts. Man, what was your reaction when you saw the Matt Ryan news go down? Only a third-round pick the Colts gave up to get him. What were your thoughts on that?
My thoughts were the Colts got him for cheap. We obviously kind of watched this Deshaun Watson disaster move forward in slow motion, and it was pretty clear early on you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to backtrack that and try to keep your franchise quarterback after you were trying to find his replacement. So my expectation was he was going to be traded. The third round is really, really cheap. For a franchise quarterback. Obviously, the Colts know that. I think you guys traded more than that just for Carson Wentz. And also some questions about Carson Wentz's fit as a franchise quarterback. So, it was disappointing from that perspective. But at the same time, as I kind of mentioned with the disaster, a lot of quarterback positions had been filled over the last couple of weeks. There was seemingly a smaller and smaller destination for Ryan moving forward, and it really got to the point of, well, you go to the Colts, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe Seattle, but you're really kind of at the end of your potential options there. So it made sense him going to the Colts. Obviously, a playoff contender. So I think all of that's for the best, but for Falcons fans, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow right now. I think we're looking at some really bad football ahead of us. So, but we have a lot of bad football behind us, so it's not that big of a difference.
Sure. It's crazy, man. Like, I kind of look at like what Chris Ballard has done this offseason. Obviously, last year, the fiasco, the Carson Wentz trade, give up a first and a third. But the Colts have really been able to. It's crazy. Like this offseason, when they kind of, in my opinion, fleeced Washington and getting, a third-round pick, trading up, getting a higher second-round pick this year, and then getting a third-round pick that could be a conditional second next year. So the Colts actually, they traded away Carson Wentz, got more draft capital, gave away one of their third-round picks, and they came out of this thing pretty clean, honestly, all things considered.
Yeah, they sure did. Washington, one of those good destinations for a veteran quarterback like Matt Ryan. But obviously that option had closed up. And, if you don't have a bidding war, you end up shipping off a franchise quarterback for a third-round pick and all that. So, but, really I think from Indianapolis's perspective, like you guys have a really good setup with, say his current salary coming up. Atlanta's obviously paid the signing bonuses and things like that. So just his base salary is really, really reasonable, especially for, a player at that part of his career. Obviously 36, 37, he's getting a little bit older, a little bit of that zip's missing, but it's nothing like, say Phillip Rivers was at 2 years ago, where he was, he was pretty close to that Big Ben territory last year where, he's not able to really throw it down the field. Matt Ryan's not quite there yet, and for a little perspective, at least from my vantage point, Ryan fits closer into that category of, at least as far as health is concerned, more into say that Drew Brees category. Because if you notice, guys like Ben Roethlisberger, they start falling off because every year they're undergoing new surgery, they have new injuries popping up and everything like that. Ryan has stayed shockingly healthy throughout his career, despite the offensive line that Atlanta has. So I think his long-term health. I don't think you're going to be running into so many of those issues. So while you may be looking at it from maybe like a 2-year perspective, I think obviously if things work out well, you could be looking at a contract extension for Ryan. Into like say his age 40 season, things like that. So just one of those things to kind of note, even though he is he is older, he's obviously on the wrong side of 30, but As far as his health is concerned, his effectiveness is concerned, I think you're in a good spot with him compared to a lot of your other options.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line, and I wanted to kind of transition to that, talking about what Matt Ryan is coming from to what he's going to here in Indianapolis. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it seemed like last year Atlanta didn't really have that great of a roster around Matt Ryan, right? You mentioned the offensive line, sacked over 40 times, didn't really have a running game. I think it was 31st or something around there, bottom of the league in terms of running the football. He didn't really have Calvin Ridley, obviously didn't have Julio. Really had Kyle Pitts, Russell Gage, I know was a name. So how do you think, in your opinion, going from what the Falcons had surrounding Matt Ryan to what the Colts have, how do you think that could potentially help Matt Ryan in his game in 2022 and moving forward?
I think that's going to be a big step up for him. Yeah, I don't know if you can really oversell how bad the Falcons team was last year, because as you noted, Calvin Ridley gone. He wasn't a very big contributor while he was there either. But you get rid of Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, a rookie. You had Cordell Patterson, who did kind of trail off at the end of last year's as kind of running back, wide receiver, offensive weapon. But that's really like the full extent of the talent there. The offensive line was awful. It's going to be a really big transition going from Jalen Mayfield. I think he was rated like the worst or second worst guard all of last year, up to Quentin Nelson, who is on the complete other side of that spectrum. That's going to be interesting, as well as Jonathan Taylor. I think that's going to be a really good fit because. Like I said, Matt Ryan, he is a little bit older. I think it's going to be less likely where he's going to be, say, carrying that entire offense. But if you put him behind a good offensive line like that, typically Pro Football Focus has him as one of the top quarterbacks when he's kept clean. The problem is he was never kept clean in Atlanta. Not for years. They tried again and again to fix the offensive line. It just kept getting worse. Really, so it'll be a really interesting situation. I'm wondering what the pass catchers in Indianapolis are going to be able to provide, but I think the best fit for Ryan is behind that good offensive line, behind that run game, and just let him be extremely efficient with the football, and hopefully being able to rely on the defense. He hasn't been able to do that. Nearly his entire career in Atlanta. So it'll be interesting. I've got pretty high hopes for where that's going to lead. But the AFC has turned into kind of a juggernaut. It looks like, with all the flurry of signings everywhere. But I do like Indianapolis as a landing spot for him.
Yeah, and he's never really had a back like Jonathan Taylor, too. He was asked about Jonathan Taylor in his introductory press conference. He's like, man, this dude's a beast. He's like, we were watching the Buffalo tape, when they were playing Buffalo later in the year, and he was just like, oh, my word. So I will be very interested, because I don't know when, and I was going to ask you, when's the last time Atlanta's had a semi-decent running game? Because it feels like it's been a while since they've had it. When was the last time?
So it's easy to forget it because it was so short. But in 2016, that was Matt Ryan's MVP year. You had Devonta Freeman at his absolute peak, and you had Tevin Coleman as this pretty good backup. This nice 1-2 punch there. There was a really good. So that was a really good run game. I couldn't tell you like the yards per carry, but like they did it. The offensive line was quite good that year. They had those backs as well, and Ryan was able to put up an MVP season. But he did have very, very early in his career Michael Turner. If anyone remembers him, this big, like 240 plus pound running back who could just bowl over people. Ryan was able to rely on him, through his rookie season, and I think. Up until 2012, there was another playoff season, but Turner was kind of on his last legs there. But when he does have that run game and some other pieces to kind of rely on, Ryan is able to pull wins out through that. I think the problem in Atlanta the last few years has been there's no one else to rely on. There's no defense. There's no run game. The offensive line isn't helping. Your pass catchers aren't helping. You're really kind of relying on Matt Ryan and only Matt Ryan because no one else is going to be able to win you those games.
Yeah, and an issue the Colts had last year, they relied on Jonathan Taylor a ton, and for obvious reasons. But when it came down to it, when the Colts needed Carson Wentz to do something and really make a play and win them a game, he really struggled down the stretch. Obviously there were other reasons why the Colts, kind of collapsed the last 2 weeks of the season, but Carson Wentz was part of that equation. And you just mentioned how Matt Ryan really had to put the team on his back. So how much of a difference and how helpful do you think for Matt Ryan's sake will it be to have a guy like Jonathan Taylor and have a defense that you don't always have to play from behind and you don't always have to do everything? How helpful do you think that will be for him?
I think that's going to be great because that is where he shines a little bit more. If you're able to not be playing from behind, if you have that run game that can help keep the pressure off your quarterback, like I said, Pro Football Focus typically has Ryan. He's right at the top if he's kept clean. I'm not sure about last year. Last year was kind of just kind of an ongoing disaster in Atlanta, but I think if you're able to do that and keep that run game going, that's really going to be playing to his strengths and, just playing smart football, not turning it over, making those conversions when needed. Like that's really going to be his wheelhouse there. I think that's going to be perfect for everything Indianapolis needs him to do.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit briefly. I wanted to kind of double back on it. Just what Matt Ryan's strengths are, right? The things that he does really well. Now, Carson Wentz, I would say the things that he was really good at, he was really physically gifted, obviously. He could do those things. He could make those plays with his legs. I don't think Brian's right there, even though I did watch a clip of him doing a 2-point conversion. And I was like, man, Matt Ryan still can kind of move for being 36, nearly 37 years old. What would you say, though, are his strengths? Like, what do you think are the big things? If you had to highlight, like, the top 3 things for Matt Ryan and his strengths that he's going to bring to Indianapolis that maybe Carson Wentz didn't bring, what would you say?
Ooh, top 3 that Wentz doesn't have. I think you could get right to the root of it immediately. Leadership, which seems to be the big negative on Wentz there. If my understanding is right there, and Ryan has done that all the way from his rookie season. He's he always gets guys to buy in. He does put in that extra work. He knows what he's doing. He works with his guys. Like all of his his former teammates love him. His current teammates love him. So I think that's going to be a big change. I'd say Ryan probably excels right now in that kind of medium range pass game. So he is pretty good at the deep ball, but I wouldn't focus too much on that. I think if you're able to, I think if you're able to motion out your running backs, if you're able to focus on your tight ends, maybe your slot wide receivers, he's going to be able to move the ball really effectively that way. I think that's going to be great. And, you did say you saw one clip of Ryan scrambling. He's not necessarily known as a running quarterback, but he can move more than just that 2-point conversion. He's, even this late into his career, he's still able to effectively get around defenders a lot. He will go run for the ball, and he's quite effective in that. I know there are probably some advanced stats on his running, but I think that's a really overlooked part of his game, and that does help give you that one additional option, which has been helpful for Atlanta because we have had so few options. But for Indianapolis, I think that's going to be really helpful, especially on third down when things break down and you do need to make that conversion. I think you'll probably see him. You'll probably see him make some of those runs, once or twice a week. I think that'll probably be the most. That'll probably be the most surprising thing. It'll be a lot different than say Phillip Rivers or something moving around in the pocket. Ryan can run. He's just not quite like Lamar Jackson fast or anything.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, and I think it's a very lazy comparison, have compared him to Philip Rivers, saying he's a statue in the pocket and everything. I feel like whenever a quarterback's a pocket passer, people just automatically say they're a statue in the pocket. I don't get that sense that Ryan's like that at all. I get the sense that he maybe obviously isn't a Lamar Jackson or anything, but he can still move in the pocket when he needs to. Philip Rivers really couldn't. And I feel like that kind of maybe almost limited the way that the Colts use their offense, even though Philip Rivers was really good with them. But I feel like Ryan and with what he has, with his arm and everything, even though it may be slightly in the decline, I don't know, where that is right now. But I feel like with that, the Colts aren't going to have to really change up anything offensively. Like he's going to be able to run their full playbook. He's got the arm. He's got the mobility, even at 37 years old. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's probably right. You might, I think anytime you're moving between quarterbacks, you might focus on one part of the playbook compared to the other. And I don't think you would give, the exact same thing you give Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan, but I don't think you're going to be limited. You might have, say, fewer designed runs or something, because you do want to kind of focus on that if you have Carson Wentz, because he can run the ball in between getting injured, typically. So, you probably take away some of those, and you probably focus, say on some more complex passing routes, things like that, Matt Ryan understands. He's been working with for, 14, 15 years in the pros. He's really able to do all of that. So I think, you would get the same playbook, but you would just be focusing on some different parts. You'd be focusing on, what Ryan can do much better than, say, Carson Wentz could do.
Yeah, one of the biggest knocks on Wentz, this is going to be the last thing. I appreciate you coming on, man. Big knock on Carson Wentz was sometimes he couldn't read defenses very well, right? He couldn't read it, whenever the play was happening. He didn't know where to go with the ball and all those things. I get the sense that Matt Ryan is very strong in that area. Like he knows where he wants to go with the ball, similar to Rivers in that way. And it's going to bode well for guys like Nyheim Hines, who the Colts were really underusing. But with Philip Rivers, he had a career year. And Paris Campbell, just guys like that, being able to, on the fly, know where to go with the football. Is that a strength of Matt Ryan's as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you'll see if you take a deeper dive into Ryan's stats, he's not, I think he might have had there might have been a little impression of he's just throwing the ball to, say, Julio Jones, something like that. But that certainly happened. But one of the things you'll notice is he's able to work all the way down the roster. Like there were some seasons where you might have 10 plus different players who are catching touchdowns. And that's something he's going to be able to do. He's going to be, he's going to throw to your tight end 2, your tight end 3, wide receiver 5. If you've got a wide receiver 6, something like that. He's really able to. He's really able to move through his reads where he's not just staring down that wide receiver 1, that tight end number 1. He's able to move through and put the ball in just the perfect place for a lot of these guys. And I think that's something that I wouldn't say would be a strength of Carson Wentz. I think that's I think that's really for a passer who's a lot more like Ryan, who's able to use that full that full depth chart really to help move the ball. I think that's going to be that's going to be a big change from last year.
It's crazy, man. I feel like there's already so many Falcons fans who are kind of Colts fans for basically Matt Ryan. And I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in Indianapolis. I know there's been some comparisons to Manning and Brady when they went late in their careers to different organizations. They were able to win it. Hopefully the Colts and Matt Ryan are able to bring it back. I keep talking about the AFC is insane right now, but I do certainly think that Matt Ryan for the Colts gives them the best chance to win now. And also one thing I'm really intrigued by is if/when the Colts draft a quarterback for their future, whether it's this year or next year. I think there's no better teacher in the NFL than Matt Ryan right now.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, I think Falcons fans were expecting that to happen here. Instead Ryan's gone, and we don't. He's not able to mentor a young quarterback here, and kind of move. Kind of help transition to that next stage. So I think that'll be great for Ryan. I think he's going to be really good with that aspect of it, whether it's this year, next year, or 2024, whatever year that is. I think he's going to be the guy you would like to have with your rookie quarterback.
Absolutely. Matthew, I appreciate you coming on, man. Again, this is Matthew Chambers from The Falcoholic. Matthew, if anybody wants to check out your work or anything on The Falcoholic, where can they find you at?
Sure. So the Falcoholic, we are part of SB Nation. You can find us on thefalcoholic.com, or you can find me at Falcoholic Matt on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, guys, be sure to check him out and all their content. Thank you again, Matt. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.